The night began with the kind of quiet that presses against the ribs. The kind that makes a person wonder if hope has a sound when it finally breaks. She stood on the sidewalk beneath flickering holiday lights with only 3 crumpled dollars in her coat pocket and a clock inside her chest counting down to midnight, and she knew that if this evening went wrong, it would confirm everything she had been afraid to believe about herself. New Year's Eve had always been a promise to others, but for her it felt like a test she never studied for, and tonight she had walked into it with nothing but thin courage, worn shoes, and a heart that still dared to show up. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you believe small moments can change entire lives. Stories like this live because people like you keep them alive. She had agreed to the date because saying yes felt like a rebellion against a year that had taken almost everything from her. The year had stripped her apartment down to bare walls and cardboard boxes, had turned her career into a string of polite rejections, and had taught her the humiliating arithmetic of choosing groceries over gas. By the time December arrived, she had learned how to fold disappointment small enough to fit into a smile. The $3 in her pocket were not meant for romance or celebration. They were a last resort fare home if the bus stopped running early. Still, she went, because hope is stubborn and sometimes shows up even when it is not invited. The place they chose was modest but warm, the kind of neighborhood cafe that glowed like a lantern against the winter dark. Inside, people laughed and clinked glasses, counting down to a year that promised to be better simply because it had to be. She hesitated at the door, already calculating how to keep the truth hidden, already rehearsing the careful dance of pretending not to want more than she could afford. She had not planned to eat, she had planned to listen, to smile, to be grateful for the company, and then slip away before midnight made demands she could not meet. He arrived with the soft awkwardness of someone who had been out of practice for a long time, a single dad whose life revolved around school lunches, bedtime routines, and the fragile orbit of 3 little girls who shared his eyes and none of his reserve. He had mentioned his daughters in their messages, triplets with a talent for turning any room into a carnival. She had liked that about him, the way he spoke of them not as a burden but as a constellation he navigated by. He apologized for being late, breathless from a last-minute scramble, and she saw in him a familiar exhaustion, the kind that comes from loving people more than you love yourself. The evening unfolded gently at first, like a careful truce between 2 cautious souls. She listened more than she spoke, aware of the menu glowing behind the counter like a dare. The smell of coffee and baked bread made her stomach ache in a way that was both hunger and memory. She thought of the years when ordering anything felt easy, when New Year's Eve meant glitter and laughter and plans. Now, each minute brought her closer to the moment when the check would arrive like a verdict. She tried to tell herself that the night itself mattered more than the ending, but fear has a way of sharpening the edges of every thought. As the clock crept forward, the cafe grew louder, the air thick with anticipation. Outside, snow began to fall, a soft confetti for people who believed in beginnings. She found herself wishing for something small and unreasonable, wishing that time would pause just long enough for her to breathe. When the server came near, her heart raced, and she felt the weight of the $3 like a secret she could not keep much longer. She imagined the awkward explanation, the polite insistence on paying her share, the shame that would bloom no matter how gently it was handled. That was when the door opened again, letting in a gust of cold and a trio of bundled figures who moved with synchronized chaos. The triplet daughters burst into the cafe like living fireworks, their coats too big, their laughter uncontainable. They were supposed to be at home, asleep, tucked into the safety of routine, but life with children is rarely obedient to plans. Their father's face transformed in an instant, surprise giving way to a smile that reached places fatigue could not touch. The girls spotted him and raced forward, cheeks pink, eyes bright, carrying with them the unfiltered magic of being young on a night that promised wonder. The cafe softened around them. Strangers smiled. The tension she carried loosened its grip as the girls filled the space with stories and gestures, and the simple certainty that something good was happening because they were together. She watched them with a mixture of joy and envy, feeling the ache of what she did not have and the gratitude for what she was allowed to witness. The girls noticed her then, not with suspicion but with the easy curiosity of children who have not yet learned to guard their kindness. They hovered close, studying her face as if trying to decide where she fit into the picture. She felt exposed in their presence, as if they could see straight through the careful layers she had built. The $3 seemed to burn in her pocket. She imagined the moment when the bill would arrive, imagined the disappointment that would flicker across their father's face when the night became complicated. She told herself she could slip away, invent an excuse, leave before anyone noticed, but the girls settled in, pulling chairs close, turning the table into a small island of warmth. For the first time that night she laughed without calculating the cost. The check came quietly, set down with the unceremonious weight of reality. Her chest tightened. She reached for her coat, already bracing for the familiar humiliation. Before she could speak, the girls leaned in with the solemnity of a secret mission. They had been saving all year, they explained with earnest gestures and wide eyes, coins and crumpled bills collected from lost teeth and extra chores. New Year's Eve was special, they insisted, and special nights were meant to be shared. They pooled their savings, on the table, a small mountain of faith, and declared that this night belonged to all of them. The room seemed to hold its breath. She felt something break open inside her, a dam she had reinforced for months. The kindness was so unexpected, so pure, that it left her defenseless. She tried to protest, to explain, to refuse the gift that felt too heavy to accept, but the girls were unwavering, their belief in generosity absolute. Their father watched, eyes shining, understanding dawning not as pity but as respect. In that moment, she was not a problem to be solved. She was a person being welcomed. They stayed until the countdown began, the cafe erupting in cheers as midnight arrived. Confetti fell. Strangers hugged. The girls counted loudly, voices overlapping, and when the new year finally broke, it did so with a rush of sound and light that felt like forgiveness. She stood there, surrounded by a family she had not expected, feeling the year turn in her hands like a page she was finally ready to read. The $3 in her pocket no longer felt like a verdict. It felt like a reminder of where she had been when Grace found her. After that night, life did not transform overnight. Bills still arrived. Opportunities still took their time. But something had shifted, subtle and profound. She found herself braver in small ways, applying for jobs she would have dismissed before, saying yes to invitations that scared her. The memory of the girls' faces, earnest and determined, became a talisman against despair. When she felt the old fear creeping in, she remembered that kindness could come from unexpected places, and that accepting it was not a weakness, but a bridge. She saw them again in different seasons, at parks and school events, in moments stitched into the fabric of ordinary days. The girls grew taller, their laughter evolving but never fading. Their father remained steady, a man learning how to balance the weight of responsibility with the lightness of hope. She became part of their orbit in a way that did not demand perfection, only presence. They taught her that family could be chosen, that love did not require grand gestures, only consistency and care. Years later, when she looked back on that New Year's Eve, it no longer felt like a night defined by what she lacked. It felt like a beginning disguised as an ending, a moment when the universe leaned in and whispered that she was not alone. The $3 became a story she told not with shame but with reverence, a reminder that the smallest sums can buy the most enduring lessons. She learned that dignity is not about self-sufficiency at all costs, but about recognizing when to let others show up for you. As this story draws near its close, if it has touched something tender inside you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who could use a reminder that kindness still exists, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find their way to you. Before the ending, here is a special request. Please comment the word kindness if this story made you feel hopeful, or share a brief moment when a stranger's generosity changed your day. The night she began with only $3 ended with a wealth she could not have imagined, measured not in currency but in connection. She stepped into the new year carrying the quiet certainty that even when resources run thin, compassion multiplies. And somewhere, beneath winter lights and falling snow, 3 little girls learned that stepping in for someone else can turn an ordinary night into a lifelong memory, one that keeps echoing long after the clock strikes midnight.